In this video, first, we will learn what GNS3 All-in-One and GNS3 VM are and how they work. Then, we will discuss the differences between Cisco Packet Tracer, Cisco VIRL, and GNS3. Later, we will understand the technology GNS3 uses to create virtual devices. After it, we will learn how to perform an error-free installation of the GNS3 client and server. Then, we will learn how to import Cisco IOS image files to GNS3. At the end of the video, we will discuss some tips you can use to test, troubleshoot, and verify the installation and configuration. So, let's start the video. CCNA and CCNP exam syllabus includes many topics you need to perform on Cisco routers and switches. Cisco routers and switches are expensive. A CCNA lab, including only essential hardware, may cost you at least $1,000. You can save this money by using GNS3. GNS3 is open source and free software. It allows you to emulate, configure, test, and troubleshoot Cisco devices in a virtual lab environment. You can use it to build a virtual lab to practice CCNA and CCNP exam topics. GNS3 works on the client-server model. It consists of two components, the GNS3 All-in-One software and the GNS3 Server. GNS3 All-in-One is the client part of GNS3 that you install on your local computer. It provides a graphical user interface to create and test topologies. GNS3 Server is the server part of GNS3. It stores and runs all devices that you use in the client part. You have three options to install the GNS3 Server. Install the GNS3 Server on the local computer as an application. Create a virtual machine on the local computer and install the GNS3 Server on the virtual machine. Create a virtual machine on a remote server and install the GNS3 Server on it. Which option you choose depends on your requirements and system configuration. The first option is the easiest. It does not need any additional configuration. If you want to create only small networks or add only some Cisco devices to your network, you should use this option. This setup needs less hardware configuration but supports limited devices. The second option needs additional configuration and a virtual machine. If you want to create advanced networks or add many Cisco devices to your network, you can use this option. This setup supports all the devices you need to practice CCNA and CCNP exam topics, but it needs more hardware configuration. To use this option, you need a laptop or a desktop with at least a dual-core processor, 8 GB RAM, and 40 GB free disk space. If you want to use GNS3 to practice CCNA and CCNP exam topics, the second option is the best. If your computer has the minimum required configurations, you should use the second option to install GNS3. If your computer does not have the minimum required configurations, you can use the first option to install GNS3. The third option is the most complex. If you want to create large networks or add devices from multiple vendors, you can use this option. Administrators use this option to test their networks. This setup is not required to practice CCNA and CCNP exam topics. GNS3 supports two methods to create virtual devices. These methods are emulation and simulation. In the first method, GNS3 creates the exact virtual copy of the physical device. In the second method, GNS3 creates a virtual copy of some selected features and functions of the physical device. Since other network simulator software also uses one of these two processes to create virtual devices, let's discuss these processes in more detail. If network simulator software creates a virtual copy of a physical device, it is called emulation. If the software uses an emulation process to create a virtual device, the virtual device needs all hardware and software configurations of the physical device. If network simulator software creates a virtual copy of the features and functions of the physical device, it is called simulation. If software uses a simulation process to create a virtual device, the virtual device does not need hardware and software configurations of the physical device. It creates a copy of some features, commands, and functions of the physical device and implements them on a virtual device. If we talk about simulation, all three software, Cisco Packet Tracer, Cisco VIRL, and GNS3, support simulation. They include many inbuilt simulated devices that you can use to test the running configurations on emulated devices. PCs, hubs, and Layer 2 switches are some examples of simulated devices. If we talk about emulation, Cisco Packet Tracer does not support emulation at all. GNS3 supports emulation but does not provide Cisco IOS image files. You have to supply all necessary iOS image files. You can obtain an iOS image file from many sources. You can download it from the internet, purchase it from Cisco, copy it from a running Cisco device, etc. Cisco VIRL supports emulation. It also includes Cisco IOS images. You can use Cisco VIRL out of the box. Which software you should choose from Cisco Packet Tracer, Cisco VIRL, and GNS3 depend on your requirement and budget. If you are a beginner and need easy-to-use software to practice CCNA exam topics, Cisco Packet Tracer is the best. If you are an intermediate or an advanced user and need software to practice CCNP or CCIE exam topics, you can use either Cisco VIRL or GNS3. If you need immediate support and are ready to spend $200 to $300 yearly, you can choose Cisco VIRL. If community support is sufficient for you, you can use GNS3. Besides support, GNS3 provides more features and functions than Cisco VIRL. To download GNS3, open a web browser and search GNS3. Select the official website of GNS3 from the search result. The official website provides downloading options only to registered users. If you already have an account, use that to log in, or create a free account and use that to log in. After login, click Free Download. Download the Windows version of GNS3. If you want to use a virtual machine for the GNS3 server, click Download the GNS3 VM. Select the virtual machine that your virtualization software support. It is a large file. If you have a slow internet connection or have a limited data plan, do not download it by now. It's not compulsory to set up a virtual machine to use GNS3. You can use GNS3 without a virtual machine. You can download the virtual machine file later. If your friend or relative has a fast internet connection, you can use his connection to download it. If any of your friends have already downloaded the virtual machine file, you can copy it from there. After downloading one or both files, open the folder that contains the downloaded files. This is the GNS3 client file. This is the GNS3 virtual machine file. Double-click the GNS3 client installation file. The installation process starts in a wizard. The first screen of the wizard shows a welcome message and a suggestion to close other applications before starting the installation of GNS3. It's only a suggestion, not a requirement. You can install GNS3 while other applications are running, but in that case, you have to restart the system before you can use it. Click Next to start the installation. The next screen shows the license agreement. Click the I agree option to accept the license agreement. The next screen allows us to customize the Start menu folder name. By default, the wizard uses the name GNS3 for the Start menu folder name. If you want to use something else, set the new name. If you want to use the default name, no action is required here. Make your choice and click Next. GNS3 installation package contains several additional tools and components. We don't need all of them. If you want to use GNS3 without a virtual machine, select these components and tools. If you want to use GNS3 with a virtual machine, select these components and tools. Click Next to continue. The next screen allows us to customize the installation folder location. By default, the wizard installs GNS3 in the Program Files folder of the Windows partition. If you want to install GNS3 in another folder, update the folder location. You can also create a new folder to install GNS3. Click Next to start the installation. The installation process checks the dependencies of core GNS3 component. If it needs any additional package or library, it downloads and installs them. After installing core GNS3 component, the installation process installs the additional selected components. If you have selected third-party tools, the installation wizard will download and install them now. A third-party tool may ask you to accept its license agreement or provide additional information. For example, you need to accept the license agreement of MCAP and provide your email ID to SolarPutty. After installing all components, the wizard lists the installation logs. Check logs for any errors. If all looks good, click Next. After installing all selected components, the wizard shows a promotional offer from SolarWinds. SolarWinds makes software for network testing and troubleshooting. It also supports the GNS3 project. It offers a free standard tool set to GNS3 users. This tool set contains a lot of network testing and troubleshooting tools. You don't need this toolkit to practice CCNA and CCNP exam topics. Select No and click Next. On the last screen of the installation process, the wizard offers an option to start GNS3 just after the installation. By default, this option is selected. If you don't want to run GNS3 just after the installation, uncheck this option. Click Finish to close the installation wizard. When we install the GNS3 client, the installation process automatically installs the GNS3 server component in the GNS3 client installation directory. This component allows us to run a local GNS3 server with or without a virtual machine. By default, GNS3 does not enable the GNS3 server component. You have to manually enable it from the setup wizard. When the GNS3 client starts the first time, it automatically starts the setup wizard. The setup wizard allows you to configure the GNS3 server. On the first screen of the setup wizard, you need to choose how you want to run the GNS3 server. As discussed earlier, you can run the GNS3 server in 3 modes. In the first mode, the GNS3 server runs virtual devices directly from the local system. This mode is the best if your computer has less hardware configuration. It supports only limited virtual devices. In the second mode, the GNS3 server runs virtual devices from the virtual machine configured on the local system. This mode is the best if your computer has a moderate hardware configuration. It supports all virtual devices you need to practice CCNA and CCNP exam topics. In the third mode, the GNS3 server runs virtual devices from a remote computer. As discussed earlier, this mode is not required to practice CCNA and CCNP exam topics. Because of this, we will not discuss this mode in this video. We will discuss this mode separately in another video. To run the GNS3 server on the local system without a virtual machine, select the second option. To stop the setup wizard from running from each time when you start GNS3, click here. You can change your choice anytime by running this wizard again. Click Next. On the next screen, you need to configure 3 options: server path, host binding, and port. Server path. It is the location of the GNS3 server component. Usually, the wizard automatically picks up the correct location. But if not, you can use the Browse button to select the correct location. The GNS3 client installation process installs the GNS3 server component in the installation directory of the GNS3 client. Host binding. The local GNS3 server runs on this IP address. The wizard offers many IP addresses to choose from in the dropdown. Although you can use any available IP address from the dropdown, you should use the IP address 127.0.0.1. This IP address belongs to the loopback interface. It provides the most error-free environment to the applications that run a server process on the local system. Port. The local GNS3 server accepts connections from GNS3 clients on this port. You can use any available TCP port. By default, the wizard automatically configures these values. Click Next to continue. The wizard starts the GNS3 server and connects the GNS3 client to it on the selected IP address and port number. On the next screen, it displays the result. If it shows the message, connection to the local GNS3 server has been successful. It verifies that the local GNS3 server has been set up successfully. On the last screen, it displays the summary of configuration settings it used to start the local GNS3 server and connect the GNS3 client to it. Click Finish. Now, you can use GNS3 to create and test network topologies. This setup supports only limited devices such as legacy iOS images, virtual PCs, built-in hub, switches, etc. To run the GNS3 server with a virtual machine, open the folder that contains the downloaded file. Select the GNS3 server file and right-click. Click the Extract All option. Click Next. You need to import this file. Now start your virtualization software. I am using the VMware Workstation. You can import a new virtual machine directly from the home screen of the VMware Workstation. Click Open a new virtual machine. If this option is not available, click File and click Open. Select the extracted file. Click Open. VMware Workstation opens the file in the Import Virtual Machine wizard. Set the name GNS3 VM for the virtual machine. Select the destination folder where you want to store it. Select the folder on the partition that has at least 20 GB of free disk space. You can also create a new folder to store the imported virtual machine. Click Import. Importing process may take a few minutes. VMware Workstation lists the imported virtual machine in the left pane. You don't need to change any of these settings. Now, open the GNS3 client. Start the Setup wizard again. Select the first option. Click Next. We have already discussed these options. If the wizard does not select a value in any option or selects an incorrect value, select the correct value. Click Next. The wizard configures and starts the local server. The next screen verifies the same. Click Next. The wizard finds the GNS3 server virtual machine in VMware Workstation. If it finds the virtual machine, it automatically starts the virtual machine. If it does not find the virtual machine or you have multiple virtual machines, on this screen, you can manually tell the wizard which virtual machine to use. Select your virtualization software and the virtual machine. Click Next. The wizard starts the selected virtual machine and shows a summary of settings on the next screen. Click Finish. To verify the setup, you can check the server's summary and console panes. The server's summary pane shows the current state of the running servers. It must show the local server and virtual machine in the running state. The console pane shows logs. If the wizard fails to start the virtual machine or connect to it, it lists the reasons and errors in the console pane. To use GNS3, you need to create a project. A project is your network. To create a new project, click File and click New Blank Project. Set a name for your project. Select the location where you want to store the project file. You can also open an existing project from here. The most recent projects are listed here. You can open any recent project directly from here. Click OK. When you create a new project or network, GNS3 does not add any device to the network. It creates a blank project or network. Before we add devices to our network, let's understand the GNS3 terminology and GUI interface. This is the workspace. We create network topologies here. This is the toolbar. It contains tools that allow us to perform common tasks. Tools are organized in groups. This is the device toolbar. It contains all simulated and emulated devices that we add to the network. When we install GNS3, the installation process installs some simulated devices. They are available in their respective group. The installation process does not emulate any device. Because of this, no emulated device is available just after the installation. To use an emulated device, first, we have to import it. Devices are grouped by type. By default, there are 6 groups. Let's explore each group. Routers. GNS3 lists all available routers here. Right now, there is no router. This is because we haven't added or imported any router. When we will import or add a new router, it will be listed here. To close a group, either click Close or click the group icon. Switches. GNS3 lists all switches here. These are the default simulated switches. End devices. This group lists all end devices such as PCs, printers, scanners, etc. Security devices. This group lists security appliances such as firewall and security onion. All devices. This group lists all devices from all groups. Add a link. This group does not contain any device. It includes the links you can use to connect devices. Let's create a simple network by using 2 PCs and 1 switch. Click End Devices. Drag the PC to the workspace. If you are using GNS3 with a virtual machine, you need to select the server you want to use to run this device. To run this device directly from the host computer, select the local server. To run this device inside the virtual machine, select GNS3 VM. To add another PC, we need to follow the same process. Each time, when you drag a PC to the workspace, it adds a new PC to the workspace. Now, add a switch to the workspace. Now, we need to connect these devices. To connect these devices, click Add a link. Click the first device and select the interface. Click the second device and select the interface. By following the same process, Let's connect the second PC to the switch. GNS3 uses red, yellow, and green colors to show the powered off, suspended, and powered on state of a device. You can also check the topology summary pane to check the state of all devices. You can change the state of a device by doing right-click and selecting the state. To change the state of all devices available on the workspace, you can use the toolbar options. It will start all devices. It will suspend all devices. It will shut down all devices. By default, GNS3 does not display interface names. To show interface names, click Show Hide Interface Labels. It toggles the current state. For example, if interface names are visible, clicking it will hide them. Or if interface names are hidden, clicking it will show them. You can also add notes. To add a note, click Add a Note. GNS3 does not provide a graphical utility to configure devices. To configure a device, you have to use the console prompt. To open the console prompt of a device, right-click the device and click Console. To open the console prompt of all devices, click Console on the GNS3 toolbar. To assign an IP address to the PC, use the IP command. It needs two arguments: IP address and subnet mask. GNS3 checks the supplied IP address on the network. If the supplied IP is not in use, it assigns the supplied IP address to the PC. Let's assign an IP address to PC2. To test connectivity between devices, you can use the ping command. The ping command sends small test data packets to the destination device in a sequence. If the destination device is connected to the source device, the destination device replies. If you see reply messages in the output of this command, it verifies that the source device and the destination device have proper connectivity. By default, GNS3 does not save the configuration running on the device. It means if you reload the project or device, the running configuration on the device will be lost. To save the running configuration on the device, you need to use the device's save function. PCs include the save command. The save command allows you to save the running configuration. When you save the running configuration, GNS3 writes it to the startup configuration. GNS3 checks the startup configuration of each device when you start it. If it finds the startup configuration, it loads that configuration to the device. If you save the project after saving the running configuration on all PCs, on reload, all PCs will start from where you left them. You can obtain Cisco IOS image files from many sources. You can get them from a Cisco device or download them from Cisco's official site if you have an active subscription plan. If you don't have any of these, you can download them from the internet. Many sites store and offer Cisco IOS images for educational purposes. You can use this search term on Google to find them. You can use any working site from the result to download the Cisco IOS image files. For example, this site provides the largest collection of Cisco IOS image files. Select the series. Select the model. Download the IOS. After downloading the iOS image file, open GNS3. Click Edit, and click Preferences. Navigate to iOS routers and click New. Select the server option to import and run this iOS. To import and run this iOS on the virtual machine, select this option. Select the New Image option. Click Browse. Select the downloaded iOS image file. By default, iOS files are compressed. GNS3 supports both compressed and decompressed formats. Compressed files save space. Decompressed files load faster. If you have less disk space, you can keep the file in compressed format. The wizard extracts the hardware information such as platform and chassis number from the selected iOS image file. If the extracted information is incorrect, select the correct platform and chassis number from the dropdown. If necessary, you can also adjust the device name. Verify or adjust the information and click Next. The next screen allows us to set the RAM size for this device. By default, the wizard automatically allocates the minimum recommended memory for the device. But if required, you can adjust it. If the selected iOS belongs to a modular device, the next screen allows us to install the interfaces in available slots. Select appropriate interfaces. Click Next. The idle PC value is the maximum CPU limit this iOS can use. Many iOS support this feature. If the iOS support, you should use it. It prevents a faulty or buggy iOS from consuming all CPU cycles. To find this value, click the idle PC finder. If the iOS supports it, GNS3 will automatically select a suitable value. If it does not find a suitable value, it's perfectly fine. You can use the iOS without this value. Click Finish to close the wizard. Let's import one more image to understand this process more clearly. This time, let's choose the 7200 series. Download this iOS. Select the virtual machine option. Last time we used the compressed format, this time let's decompress the image. Confirm the name and platform. Keep the default RAM. Let's install Fast Ethernet on slot 1 and Gigabit Ethernet on slot 2. Find the idle PC value. Keep the suggested value and click Finish. GNS3 lists all installed iOS image files here. Select the file which you want to manage. After selecting the file, you can use these options to manage it. You can create a copy of it. You can edit, update, or delete any settings. You can increase or decrease RAM. Install or remove interfaces from slots. You can also delete unwanted iOS image files. After importing an iOS, you can use it from the device toolbar. Drag the routers to the workspace. Create a connection. By default, GNS3 does not start routers. Let's start both routers. As discussed earlier, GNS3 does not provide a graphical utility to configure devices. We have to use the console connection. Open console connections for both routers. Both routers are ready to use. If the installation or configuration fails, restart the system before trying again. When you install or configure a local server or a virtual machine, it starts many processes in the background. If the installation or configuration fails, these processes remain active in the background and prevent you from starting them again. A system restart terminates all processes. Temporarily disable Windows Firewall and antivirus program. If it solves your problem, you need to allow the GNS3 processes in the Windows Firewall or your antivirus program. If you get the connection refused or the remote host actively denying connection errors, you can configure the GNS3 server to use another IP address. To configure another IP address, restart the system. After restart, open the command prompt. Run ipconfig/all command. Open GNS3 and run the setup wizard again. Use the IP address of the first virtual interface to configure the GNS3 server. Many services use the loopback interface to run their processes. Sometimes, a process of the running service may block the GNS3 server process. In that case, using another IP address will solve your problem. That's all for this video. In this video, we discussed what GNS3 is, how it works, and how to install and use it on Windows. If you have any feedback, comment, or suggestion related to this video, you can use the comment section given below to share them with us. Thanks for watching this video.